cold wind moved through the ruins of a forgotten battlefield. Broken ships lay scattered across the black soil like skeletons of metal beasts. Ethan walked alone, his boots sinking slightly in the soft ash. He was a human engineer, sent to recover old data cores from the wreckage. The rest of his team had gone missing 2 nights ago. The silence here was heavy, like the world itself had stopped breathing. He checked his scanner again. No life signs, no energy signals, only static. He muttered under his breath and kept moving. Dust clung to his visor. The sky above was a dark gray ocean of clouds, swirling slowly around the shattered moon. This place felt like the end of everything. Then he heard it. At first, it was only a faint sound, like a broken whisper carried by the wind. He stopped. His hand moved to the side of his helmet to increase audio sensitivity. The sound came again, clearer this time. It was not the wind. It was a voice. "Please, help." Ethan spun around, scanning the area. Nothing. He raised his rifle and stepped forward carefully. The voice came again, sharper now and desperate. Human. "Please, save her." His heart jumped. That voice was not human. It had a soft echo, like 2 notes spoken together. He turned toward the sound and finally saw her. She was small, no taller than his chest, and thin as a branch. Her skin was pale silver that glimmered faintly even in the dim light. Long white hair hung over her shoulders like strands of moonlight. Her large black eyes shone with tears. She stood in the open, trembling, her hands raised as if in surrender. Ethan froze. He had seen alien species before, but this one was just a child. "Who are you?" he asked quietly. The girl stumbled forward, nearly falling. "My name is Lyra," she cried. "My mother. She's trapped." In a human trap. "Please, save her." Ethan lowered his rifle slowly, his chest tightening. A human trap out here? That made no sense. This world had been abandoned after the war years ago. No one was supposed to be here, and yet here was this child, crying for her mother. "Where is she?" he asked. Lyra pointed with a trembling finger toward the distant forest beyond the battlefield ruins. The trees there were black and twisted, glowing faintly with threads of green light. The place was known on maps as the Dead Forest. No one entered it. Nodin returned. "You can't go alone," she said, choking on her words. "The forest is full of machines. They kill anything that moves, but I can guide you." Ethan looked at the forest, then back at the little alien girl. He had been trained to ignore local lives. His orders were clear: collect the data cores and return. This was not his problem. He should walk away, but he couldn't. Her voice. It broke something inside him. It reminded him of his younger sister, who had died on Earth during the famine years. She had been about the same age as Lyra, small, fragile, afraid. He took a deep breath. "All right," he said. "I'll help you." Lyra blinked in shock, then nodded quickly. "We must hurry," she whispered. "The trap, it drains life. If it finishes, she will die." Ethan activated the safety locks on his rifle and pulled out a scanning drone from his pack. The small metal sphere floated beside him, shining a soft blue glow. "Stay close," he told her. "Don't run. Don't speak loud." Lyra nodded again, wiping her tears. Together, they started walking toward the forest. Every step made the silence louder. The ground changed as they neared the tree line. The black soil turned to cracked stone veined with glowing moss. Strange machines lay half buried, long dead sentries from the old war, their red eyes dark. The air grew colder. Ethan felt like they were walking into the mouth of something alive. Lyra walked just ahead of him, her feet silent on the stone. She kept glancing behind them, like she expected something to follow. Once she gasped softly and clutched his sleeve, pointing to the shadows between the trees. Ethan saw nothing, but he tightened his grip on his rifle anyway. "What kind of trap?" he whispered. "A web," she said. "It holds her and drinks her life." Ethan frowned. He had seen human energy web traps before. They were used in the war to capture large alien beasts. They did not kill quickly. They drained slowly, painfully. The thought of someone's mother caught in one made his stomach twist. They stepped beneath the first trees. The world changed instantly. Light dimmed, colors faded, and the sounds of the outside world vanished like someone had closed a door. Only their footsteps remained, soft and hollow. The forest smelled of metal and cold earth. Green threads of light floated through the air like tiny ghosts. Ethan's drone beeped quietly, detecting motion ahead. He signaled Lyra to stop. A shape moved in the dark. A long, insect-like machine crawling silently along a branch above them. Its eyes glowed red for a moment, then went dark again. Lyra whispered, "They are watching." Ethan exhaled slowly. This place was death, and yet he was here, following a crying alien child into a forbidden forest to save her mother. He didn't know if he could succeed, but he knew one thing. He could not turn back now. The forest swallowed them the moment they stepped inside. Ethan felt the temperature drop at once, like stepping from life into the cold mouth of death. The light from the gray sky could no longer reach them here. Only faint green glows floated in the air, drifting slowly like lost fireflies. The twisted black trees rose like tall bones, their roots breaking the ground like claws. Lyra walked a few steps ahead, silent as a shadow. Her silver skin seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and her white hair floated gently as if the air here moved in strange ways. Every few seconds she looked back at Ethan to make sure he was still following. Ethan's scanner hummed quietly, showing random flickers of movement around them, but nothing stayed on screen long enough to confirm. It felt like invisible eyes were watching from every side. "Stay close," he whispered. Lyra nodded. Her black eyes were wide, full of fear she was trying hard to hide. They followed a narrow path of cracked stones covered in glowing moss. Strange metal vines crawled across the trees, pulsing with faint red lights. Ethan reached out to touch one, but Lyra grabbed his hand quickly and shook her head. "Don't," she whispered. "They are sensors. If you touch them, they scream." Ethan pulled his hand back slowly. He didn't want anything screaming here. The silence was sharp. No birds, no insects, no wind. Even their footsteps seemed too loud. Ethan could feel the forest pressing on him like it was alive and angry. Suddenly, a soft click came from the left. Ethan raised his rifle at once, motioning Lyra to stay still. He activated his drone silently. The small sphere floated up, scanning the shadows. A broken shape crouched behind a tree trunk, a metal skeleton, its chest cracked open. It was a war sentinel. "Old dead," or so he thought. Then its eyes flickered red. "Run," Ethan hissed. They darted forward just as the sentinel jerked to life, claws scraping the stone. Its body moved like broken metal dragged by invisible strings. Ethan fired a short burst from his rifle, sparks tearing through its skull. The machine screamed like twisting steel and collapsed, twitching on the ground. The scream echoed through the forest like a warning bell. Lyra gasped. "They will come now," she whispered. Ethan cursed under his breath. He knew how these old war systems worked. One activation would wake others. This forest was not just full of traps. It was alive with leftover war machines waiting to kill anything that entered. They ran, roots and wires clawed at their feet. Dim red lights blinked between the trees like watching eyes. Ethan's visor showed motion behind them, 2, maybe 3 shapes moving fast. They reached a clearing filled with strange glass-like flowers. Each flower glowed softly with a blue-white light. Lyra stopped suddenly and raised her hands. "Wait," she said softly. Ethan froze beside her, chest heaving. "What is it?" "Field mines," she said, pointing to the flowers. "They are not flowers. They explode when you step on them." Ethan crouched and scanned. She was right. Each glowing flower had a tiny mechanical heart, humming with stored energy. One wrong step would tear them apart. "Follow exactly where I step," Lyra whispered. "I know the safe path." She moved lightly between the flowers, stepping only on the dark stones between them. Ethan followed carefully, every muscle tense. His boots felt heavy and the soft crunch of his steps sounded like thunder. Halfway across, something moved above them. Ethan looked up. A large shape clung to the high branches, a spider-like machine, its thin legs wrapped around the trunk. Its red eyes watched silently, waiting. Ethan's hand tightened on his rifle. One shot could protect them, or trigger every mine in the clearing. Lyra reached the far edge and turned back, waving silently for him to hurry. He took a slow breath and stepped carefully, one stone at a time. The spider machine shifted its legs with a soft metallic creak. Ethan kept moving, never taking his eyes off it. Finally, he reached the other side. The spider machine stayed still like a statue, its red eyes fading again. Ethan didn't breathe until they were out of sight. They kept moving deeper. The air grew thicker like breathing smoke. The glowing moss became brighter, painting everything in sickly green light. Strange shapes hung from the branches. Broken helmets, cracked alien skulls, and twisted machines rusted into the wood. This forest had eaten everything that entered. Lyra suddenly stopped and knelt beside the path. Ethan walked closer and saw deep claw marks in the stone glowing faintly. "She fought here," Lyra whispered. Her voice trembled. "My mother. She tried to escape the trap, but they dragged her back." Ethan knelt and touched the claw marks. They were fresh. That meant Saris was still alive. For now, he looked ahead. The path curved down into darkness where the trees grew so close together no light passed through. His scanner showed faint power surges deeper inside. Probably the trap. "Listen," Ethan said quietly. "Once we get close, stay behind me. No noise, understand?" Lyra nodded, wiping her eyes. Her fear had turned to fierce determination. They rose and walked on, disappearing into the black heart of the forest, where no one came out alive. The path ended at the edge of a silent canyon. Ethan stood still, scanning the darkness below. The canyon was narrow but deep, like a black wound carved into the world. Thin mist curled from it, glowing faintly green under the drifting moss light. Broken pillars of stone rose from the floor like jagged teeth. Lyra moved to the edge and pointed with a trembling hand. "There," she whispered. Ethan followed her gaze and froze. In the center of the canyon floor hung a glowing net of crackling blue energy. It floated between 4 black metal pylons stabbed into the ground like cruel spears. Inside the net, a figure was trapped, suspended in midair, unmoving. It was Saris. She was taller than Ethan, her silver skin dulled and cracked. Her long white hair floated like threads in water. The net wrapped around her body like spider silk made of lightning. Sparks crawled over her arms and legs. Every few seconds, the net pulsed and drew a faint shimmer of light from her chest. Life energy. Lyra gasped, her voice breaking. "Mother." Ethan's hands clenched. He had seen energy drain nets during the war. They were designed to capture giant alien beasts, drain them slowly until only husks remained. If Sarah stayed inside much longer, she would die, and there would be nothing left to save. "We have to get her out," Lyra cried. "Quiet," Ethan whispered sharply. "Sound travels here." Lyra covered her mouth, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Ethan crouched and studied the trap carefully. 4 pylons. Each one hummed with faint blue light. The net pulsed from them in rhythm. His visor displayed unstable power readings, old decaying tech but still deadly. One wrong touch could make the net collapse inward and vaporize everything inside. He needed to disable it in the right order. One mistake would kill Saris instantly. Ethan set down his pack and opened a small toolkit. Tiny hollow screens lit up around him, showing the trap's structure. He felt sweat on his neck. This was harder than any salvage mission he'd done. Lyra crawled closer. "Can I help?" "Stay back," he said firmly. "If it senses 2 life signs near it, it might tighten." Lyra nodded, clutching her arms. Her black eyes never left her mother's still body. Ethan sent his drone down first. The small sphere floated quietly over the canyon floor, scanning the pylons. Numbers scrolled on his visor. The net was on a looped charge. If he disabled one pylon, the others would spike power to compensate. He would have to cut the circuit in perfect sequence, faster than the system could respond. He felt his chest tighten. It was like defusing a bomb wrapped around someone's soul. He checked the surroundings again. The canyon was too quiet. No wind, no sound. That made him nervous. Places this quiet were rarely empty. "All right," he whispered. "Stay here. If anything happens, you run." Lyra shook her head fiercely. "I won't leave her," Ethan sighed. "Then stay hidden." "Understand?" She nodded and crawled behind a rock ledge. Ethan climbed down carefully, boots scraping the stone. The mist thickened as he reached the floor. The air was cold and sharp, carrying a faint electric taste. The blue net crackled softly, lighting the walls with ghostly flashes. He moved to the first pylon and knelt. Its surface was covered in old human military symbols, rusted and half-eaten by alien moss. He opened a side panel and slid a bypass spike inside. Sparks hissed. His visor showed power levels dropping slightly. 1 down, 3 to go. A soft metallic scrape echoed through the canyon. Ethan froze. He turned his head slowly and saw something move in the shadows above. Dark shapes clung to the canyon walls. At first he thought they were broken machines. Then they moved, slowly crawling closer. Thin insect-like limbs, glowing red eyes, long-bladed tails dragging behind them. Raider scavenger drones. Old war machines programmed to guard traps like this from rescuers. Ethan's heart thudded. Of course they were here. The trap was never meant to be opened. Anyone who tried was killed. He tapped his comm quietly. Lyra, he whispered. Listen to me. Drones are coming. Don't make a sound, silence, then a soft breath. I'll be quiet. Ethan turned back to the pylons, working faster. He slid another spike into the second pylon. Sparks exploded. The net flickered weakly, its hum stuttering. Saris twitched slightly, a soft sound escaping her lips. Half a breath. Half a moan. She's alive, Lyra whispered from above, her voice trembling with hope. Not for long if we don't move, Ethan muttered. He dashed to the third pylon, fingers flying over the controls. The first drone reached the canyon floor, metal claws clicking on the stone. Its red eyes glowed like burning coals. Two more followed, crawling along the walls like hungry spiders. Ethan yanked out the spike. The net screamed, a high-pitched electric shriek. The drones screeched back and charged forward. Not now, Ethan growled. He sprinted to the last pylon, sparks chasing him. The drones leapt from the walls, blades spinning. Ethan jammed the final spike in place and slammed the power override. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then the net collapsed with a crackling hiss. The blue energy threads dissolved into glowing dust. Saris fell limply from the air, right into Ethan's arms. She's out, Lyra cried, standing up. But the ground shook as the first drone slammed down in front of Ethan, claws snapping. Ethan looked up, Saris's weight in his arms. 3 drones closing in fast. Run, he hissed, and the fight for their lives began. Dust exploded as Ethan hit the ground running, Saris limp in his arms. The first drone lunged like a giant metal spider, its red eyes blazing. Ethan swung his body aside at the last second. The machine's claws smashed into the stone where he had stood, shattering it like glass. Sharp fragments flew across the canyon. Lyra, move, he shouted. The little alien girl darted down from the rocks, her white hair flying. She grabbed a piece of broken metal with shaking hands. Her small frame trembled, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. The drones hissed, a sound like grinding blades. Their thin legs moved in quick jerks, stabbing into the stone. One of them leapt at Ethan, claws spread wide. Ethan dropped to one knee, rolling Saris gently to the ground. In one motion, he raised his rifle and fired. Blue plasma bolts slammed into the drone's chest, exploding in sparks. The creature screeched and crashed into the wall, its red eyes fading to black. The other 2 charged at once, faster than he expected. Ethan fired again, but his rifle beeped, energy cell low. Only a few shots left. He backed toward Saris's still body, blocking her with his own. The canyon shook with each step of the machines. Lyra suddenly screamed, not in fear but in defiance. She pointed the piece of broken metal like a blade and ran at the nearest drone. Lyra, no, Ethan roared, but she was already there. The drone swung its claw, but Lyra slid under its legs like a silver flash. She slammed the sharp metal into the soft joint under its body. Sparks burst out. The drone screeched, spinning wildly. Ethan used the moment to fire his last shots into its head. The drone collapsed with a sharp crack, its legs twitching in the dust. Behind you, Lyra cried. The last drone dropped from the canyon wall like a falling star. Ethan rolled aside just in time, the machine slamming into the ground where he had stood. The shockwave threw him back, knocking the rifle from his hands. It skidded out of reach. The drone rose, tall and deadly, its red eyes locked on him. It raised its bladed tail high, ready to strike. Ethan's hand darted to his belt. He pulled a compact plasma cutter, meant for metal, not combat, but it was all he had. The drone lunged. Ethan dived forward, sliding under its body. He jammed the plasma cutter into its chest and triggered full power. White-hot light burst out. The drone screamed like tearing steel. Its body split open, molten metal spraying across the stone. The machine collapsed in pieces, smoke rising from its shattered frame. Silence fell. Ethan lay on his back, chest heaving, ears ringing. Sparks still crackled in the air. The smell of burned metal stung his nose. Lyra ran to him, eyes wide with shock. Are you hurt? I'm fine, he panted. He sat up, grabbing her shoulders gently. Never do that again. Understand? Lyra nodded quickly, though her small hand still shook from adrenaline. But we won. Ethan looked at the 3 broken drones lying like dead insects. He wanted to tell her this wasn't victory, it was survival, but he swallowed the words. There was no time for speeches. He crawled back to Saris. She lay motionless, her breathing shallow and uneven. The glowing cracks on her silver skin were dimmer now. Ethan pressed his glove to her neck. There was a pulse, weak and fading. "She's still alive," he said softly. Lyra knelt beside her mother, tears dripping onto the cold stone. "We have to take her home." "Not home," Ethan said. He glanced at the walls of the canyon. "This place won't let us go that easy. There will be more drones soon. We have to escape now." He pulled out a stim injector from his pack and pressed it gently to Saris's arm. A faint blue liquid flowed into her body. Her eyelids flickered slightly, but she did not wake. At least it would slow the energy drain. Ethan slung his rifle back over his shoulder and lifted Saris into his arms once more. She was heavier than she looked, and her body felt cold, almost weightless, as if she was fading from existence. Lyra stood quickly, wiping her tears. "I know a way out," she said. "Tunnels under the forest. The raiders don't go there." "Then lead the way," Ethan said. They climbed out of the canyon together. The mist curled around their feet like pale hands trying to drag them back. Ethan's boots slipped on the cracked stones, but he didn't slow. He kept his eyes on the dark forest above, scanning for new red glows. When they reached the rim, Ethan paused and looked back. The canyon lay silent again, the shattered drones lying still, but in the distance, deeper inside the forest, he saw other red eyes blinking to life. Dozens of them. The forest was waking up. "Go," Ethan said quickly. "Run!" Lyra grabbed his arm and pulled him into the trees. They ran silently, hearts pounding, as the red eyes began to move after them. The forest screamed behind them. Red eyes flashed between the trees, spreading like wildfire in the darkness. The ground shook with the pounding steps of reactivated war drones. Their claws ripped through the soil, breaking ancient roots as they charged. Ethan ran as fast as his legs could carry him, Saris limp in his arms. Every muscle in his body ached, but he didn't stop. Lyra ran just ahead, weaving between the twisted trees, her silver glow flickering like a ghost in the shadows. "Faster," she cried, looking back with wild eyes. "I'm trying," Ethan gasped. Branches whipped against his armor. Sparks burst as stray energy beams from the drone sliced through the trees. One shot scorched the ground inches from his boots. The heat singed the air. They leapt over a fallen trunk. Ethan stumbled, nearly dropping Saris, but caught himself and kept running. Her cold weight pressed against his chest like ice. He could feel her faint breath on his neck, weak, fading. The forest floor sloped down into a maze of sharp rocks. Lyra skidded to a stop and pointed to a narrow crack between two stone pillars. "Here, the tunnels are through here." Ethan didn't argue. They squeezed through the gap just as plasma fire exploded behind them, blasting chunks of rock into the air. The crack opened into a dark cavern sloping deep underground. The air here was damp and smelled of rust and old water. Bioluminescent fungi glowed on the walls, casting eerie blue light on the path ahead. Lyra's feet barely made a sound as she ran. Ethan's heavy boots clanged on the stone. The sound echoed through the tunnels like drums. From behind came the sound of tearing metal, the drones forcing their way into the crack. "They're following," Ethan muttered. "They always follow," Lyra whispered, her voice shaking. "But these tunnels twist. They get lost. Then pray they do." They raced through winding passages, twisting left then right, climbing down jagged steps of stone. Water dripped from the ceiling in slow, heavy drops. The air grew colder the deeper they went. Ethan's visor dimmed from the interference. A sudden rumble shook the ground. Ethan stopped for a second, heart hammering. Cracks spread through the ceiling above them. "Keep moving," he barked, running again. Behind them, the sound of claws grew louder. The tunnel widened into a vast underground chamber. A black river cut through its center, flowing fast and silent. Strange skeletal machines lay half-submerged in the water, their empty eye sockets glowing faintly. "This way." Lyra ran to the river's edge. "We can float down. It leads out to the open hills." Ethan set Saris down gently on the cold stone. "We need a raft," he said, looking around quickly. His eyes landed on rusted metal panels from a broken drone shell. "Help me." Lyra helped him drag the panels together. Ethan pulled out a fusion cutter, slicing and welding with rapid strokes. Sparks lit the cavern like lightning. His hands shook from exhaustion, but he didn't stop. The drone's screeches echoed down the tunnels, growing closer. He finished the raft just as glowing red lights appeared at the far tunnel mouth. "Get on," he shouted. Lyra climbed onto the shaky platform. Ethan lifted Saris again, placing her gently in the center and wrapping her in his jacket. Then he pushed the raft into the black water and jumped on behind them. The river seized them instantly, pulling them into the dark. The cavern walls blurred past. Cold water splashed their faces. The raft rattled as hidden rock scraped its underside. Ethan gripped the edges hard, teeth clenched. A shriek echoed behind them. Ethan turned his head and saw two drones leap into the river, claws tearing at the water as they swam like metal beasts. "They're coming," Lyra cried, her voice breaking. "I see them," Ethan growled. One drone lunged forward, slashing at the raft. Its claw caught the edge, ripping a chunk off. Water rushed in. The raft tilted dangerously. Lyra screamed and grabbed Saris to keep her from sliding off. Ethan ripped a plasma grenade from his belt, activated it, and hurled it into the water behind them. A blast of white light tore through the river. Water rose like a wall, smashing the tunnel walls. The drones vanished in the explosion, shattered pieces sinking into the black. The wave lifted the raft and flung it forward like a dart. They shot down the river at breakneck speed, spinning wildly. Ethan held onto Lyra with one hand and the raft with the other. The current roared louder and louder until suddenly, light ahead. A pale glow appeared at the end of the tunnel. Cold wind rushed through the darkness. "We're close," Lyra cried, eyes wide with hope. The raft burst out of the tunnel mouth into the open night air. They crashed into a wide lake surrounded by hills of black stone under a sky full of shattered stars. The raft spun, then drifted gently to a stop near the shore. Ethan rolled off onto the rocks, gasping for breath. Lyra knelt beside Saris, touching her cold face. "She's still breathing," Lyra whispered. "Good," Ethan said, sitting up slowly. His muscles felt like fire, but relief washed through him. "We made it out." Then, from far behind them in the tunnel came a faint, distant mechanical roar. They weren't safe yet. The night air was cold and sharp as broken glass. Ethan sat on the black stones, his body aching from the chase. The lake lay silent behind them, glowing faintly under the fractured starlight. Lyra knelt close to her mother, brushing damp strands of white hair from Saris's face. "She's colder," Lyra whispered. Her voice trembled. "She's fading." Ethan's jaw tightened. He pulled out his emergency medkit and searched quickly through its glowing vials. Only 2 stimulants left. They could help, or kill her if her body was too weak. He hesitated. Saris's breathing was shallow and slow, like a fading echo. Behind them, from deep inside the tunnel they had escaped, came a faint mechanical roar. It rolled through the night air like distant thunder. "They're coming," Ethan said quietly. Lyra's eyes widened. "But we just escaped." Ethan shook his head. "Drones don't stop. They track heat, sound, fear. They will come until one of us is dead." He stood and scanned the black hills around the lake. The ground rose steeply on the far side into broken cliffs. An old outpost tower leaned there, rusted and half-collapsed, its shape like a crooked finger pointing at the stars. "That tower," Ethan said, pointing. "If we reach it, I can send a signal for extraction." "Then we go," Lyra said. Ethan lifted Saris again, her weight feeling even lighter now, like she was fading into air. They climbed the rocky slope quickly, boots scraping on black stone. Cold wind howled through the cracks in the hills. Halfway up, a screech split the night. Ethan froze. Red eyes appeared behind them at the tunnel mouth. 3 glowing points, then 5, and then 10. Drones crawling out like a swarm of steel spiders, claws sparking on the rocks. "Run!" Ethan shouted. They ran. The ground shook under their feet. Rocks rolled down the slope as they scrambled up the broken path toward the tower. Energy beams hissed past them, carving deep scars into the stone. Lyra screamed as one shot blasted the ground beside her, showering her in dust. Ethan reached the tower door and slammed his shoulder against it. Rust cracked and the door fell inward with a metallic scream. They rushed inside just as the first drone leapt onto the outer wall, claws digging into metal. The tower's inside was dark and hollow. Broken control panels hung from the walls. Old human banners lay shredded on the floor. Ethan kicked debris aside, searching desperately. "There!" Lyra pointed to a control console buried under rubble. Its power core still glowed faintly. Ethan laid Saris gently on the floor, her skin pale like moonlight, then sprinted to the console. He ripped open the panel and began rewiring with shaking hands. Outside, the drones climbed the tower, their claws scraping like knives. Dust rained from the ceiling with each impact. "Come on," Ethan muttered, sparks flashing from his tools. "Come on." A loud crash shook the whole tower. One drone smashed through a window, crawling inside. Its red eyes glared like fire in the dark. Lyra screamed. Ethan spun, grabbing the broken rifle from the floor. The gun coughed a single weak blast, enough to burn through the drone's eye. It shrieked and collapsed in sparks, but more were climbing through the window. Ethan dropped the rifle and grabbed his plasma cutter. "Lyra, stay behind your mother. Don't move." Lyra nodded, eyes wide with fear. Two more drones crawled through the window. Ethan charged at them, slashing the plasma cutter in wide arcs. White-hot light cut through metal legs, slicing them clean off. Sparks filled the air. One drone exploded, throwing Ethan back into the wall. The tower shook. The whole structure groaned like it might fall apart. Suddenly, a soft hum rose behind him. Ethan turned his head and froze. Saris was standing. Her eyes were half open, glowing faint silver. A faint aura of blue energy floated around her body like smoke. She raised one trembling hand and the air itself shivered. "Stay away," she whispered. The drones paused as if stunned. Then they charged. Saris's hand flared with blinding light. A wave of invisible force blasted through the tower, hurling the drones back like rag dolls. They crashed into the walls and burst into pieces. The shockwave blew open the tower's windows, shattering glass into the night. Ethan shielded his face from the blast. When the light faded, Saris collapsed to her knees, then to the floor. "Mother!" Lyra ran to her, catching her head in her small hands. Saris's eyes fluttered. "Run. Protect her," she whispered weakly, looking at Ethan. Then her eyes closed again, and the glow vanished. Outside, more red lights appeared across the hills. Moving closer, Ethan grabbed the console again, fingers flying. The tower core sparked to life, lights flickering. He slammed the emergency beacon on. A red signal beam shot into the night sky. "Extraction signal sent," the console said in a dead mechanical voice. Ethan lifted Saris once more, cradling her against his chest. He looked at Lyra, who clung to his arm with fierce eyes. "They know where we are now," Ethan said quietly. "We just have to survive long enough for them to reach us." Outside, the sound of metal claws scraped closer through the dark. The last stand had begun. The tower trembled under the weight of approaching death. Outside, the hills crawled with red lights, drones, dozens of them, swarming through the black night like angry stars. Their claws scraped against the stone as they climbed closer, the sound echoing like knives dragged on glass. Ethan stood in the shattered doorway, Saris limp in his arms, Lyra pressed close to his side. The cold wind carried dust and the faint metallic smell of blood. "How long until rescue comes?" Lyra whispered. "Minutes," Ethan said softly. "If they heard the signal. If they didn't." "Then we fight," he answered, eyes hard. The first wave of drones crawled into the clearing around the tower. Their red eyes locked onto the doorway. Sparks flickered across their steel bodies. They hissed as one and charged. "Get behind me," Ethan shouted. He set Saris gently against the console, grabbed his last two grenades, and stepped into the doorway. The air thrummed with the whine of approaching claws. He threw the grenades. Two white flashes tore through the night. The blasts ripped the front line of drones into burning fragments, scattering metal across the rocks. But more climbed over their wreckage, unstoppable. "Too many," Lyra whispered, trembling. Ethan fired his rifle until it hissed dry. He hurled it aside and drew his plasma cutter. He fought like a cornered animal, slashing, dodging, striking at glowing eyes. Sparks filled the air. The doorway became a storm of fire and steel. A drone lunged from the side. Ethan spun too late. Its claw slammed into his chest plate, throwing him across the room. Pain shot through his ribs. He hit the wall hard, vision swimming, Lyra screamed. The drone turned on her. Before Ethan could move, a soft hum rose again. Blue light shimmered from the console. Saris was rising. Her eyes opened, glowing bright silver. The air around her vibrated. Threads of blue energy danced from her fingertips. She stepped forward like a goddess of starlight. "Enough," she whispered, her voice like ringing glass. Power exploded from her body in a silent wave. Every drone froze mid-step. Their red eyes flickered. The air cracked with invisible pressure. Then they shattered one by one like glass struck by lightning. Pieces of burning metal rained across the clearing. Silence followed, deep and absolute. Ethan stared in stunned awe, chest heaving. Lyra ran to her mother, tears shining on her silver cheeks. "Mother!" she cried, wrapping her arms around her waist. Saris knelt slowly, still glowing faintly. She touched Lyra's face gently. "You were brave," she whispered. "You saved me." Lyra shook her head, smiling through her tears. "No, he did." Saris lifted her gaze to Ethan. Her silver eyes were soft now, not blazing. "And you," she said quietly, "risked your life for a stranger." Ethan stood slowly, leaning on the broken wall for balance. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He had no answer. He hadn't saved her because of orders. He had done it because he couldn't walk away. A low roar rose from the distance, a deep thrum that shook the stones. Ethan turned and saw lights cutting through the clouds. A human rescue shuttle swooped down from the sky, engines howling, searchlights sweeping the hills. "They came," Lyra whispered. The shuttle landed in the clearing, dust whipping around them. The side ramp dropped and armored medics ran out, their suits glowing white under the stars. Ethan stepped back and let them approach. They scanned Saris quickly, their helmets flashing data. One nodded and motioned for a stretcher. "She'll live," the medic said. "We'll stabilize her on the way." Relief crashed through Ethan like a wave. His knees almost gave out. Lyra grabbed his hand, her small fingers tight around his glove. "Thank you," she whispered fiercely. "You didn't have to." "But you did?" Ethan looked down at her and managed a faint smile. "You reminded me why we fight," he said. The medics lifted Saris gently onto the stretcher and carried her aboard the shuttle. Lyra climbed in after her, but before stepping inside, she turned back. Her black eyes shone like stars. "When she wakes," Lyra said, "I will tell her everything you did. She will remember your name." Ethan nodded silently. He didn't want his name remembered. He only wanted them safe. The shuttle ramp closed. Engines roared. Dust rose like a storm as it lifted into the air, carrying Saris and Lyra away from the cursed forest and into the stars. Ethan stood alone in the clearing, the night wind cold against his face. The tower around him groaned and collapsed as the last flames died out. He watched the shuttle vanish into the sky until its light became a single spark. And then nothing. For the first time in years, Ethan felt something he thought he had lost forever: hope.